Okay, I'm going to be talking about Brenda Lafferty and it's really the murder of her from her brother-in-laws who were originally, this happened in 1984, they're originally part of the Church of the Latter-day Saints, which is, of course, very famous. But in the years preceding, really the last year especially, before her murder, these two brothers became increasingly separated from the Church of Latter-day Saints, and they formed a spin-off group more aligning with their extreme fundamentalist and, shall we say, misogynistic slash what is the word I'm looking for? Patriarchal viewpoints, which is why they chose to sort of unleash their anger, hatred, revenge type energy, righteousness, indignation, obsessive fuel of righting what they thought was a wrong in their family and society. And they picked, it's crazy because it's like, they picked Brenda, who was actually, in many cases when a man becomes enraged or fueled with sort of a righteous indignation, if he loses his wife and children, one or both, because of choices or behaviors that he has aligned himself with that are causing the family great abuse and harm, they will focus that intense, vengeful spewing towards the female that they feel wronged them, which is usually their wife, right? Or ex-wife or ex-partner. But in this case, Brenda had unknowingly caused this sort of intense animosity with Ron Lafferty, her brother-in-law, because she had been someone who was a force of, I guess, protection and escape, really, from a brutal situation of both the community, the LDS community, and her husband. So it was Diane and her 6 children. Brenda helped them sort of get away from Ron Lafferty, and they ended up fleeing the Utah area where, the church is, of course, prominent. And they fled to Florida. And so he did not have Diane to sort of unload on, right? So he focused that vitriol against Brenda because he saw her as the reason all this happened. Like that she caused his wife to lose faith in him and to misalign herself with Mormon principles. But it's kind of crazy because it's like he had already left the Mormon, well, he didn't leave, he got excommunicated from the Mormon church. He was asked to leave because of his increasing how can I say this, extreme viewpoints that didn't even align with the Mormon church anymore. So he created with his brother There had been another man who was in charge of it, but these two brothers took it over because they decided that this guy wasn't good enough to lead the group. A group called Prophets of God, which was a very isolated extremist group made of men and their families that were had to have a strict adherence to their, like I said, beyond patriarchy. We're talking about extreme misogyny and taking direct parts of the Bible, realigning them to their poor behavior and egotistical supremacy, and then they were extremely anti-government, against taxes. Lots of people are against taxes. Doesn't mean that they're fundamentalist murderers, but so went way beyond that. But they had really decided that they wanted to go back to the way it was when Mormon principles of where a man was really the head of the household, and that towards the end of it, Dan's wife, he made her even churn butter and only wear homemade clothes, and they lived somewhere without electricity or water, in the woods, and just extreme control. Ron believed in spanking. They both believed in spanking their wives if they got out of line, and beating their children, which is they had watched their own father, who was very affluent in the community. He was a very well-to-do chiropractor, and he had, I want to say, 5 or 6 sons and 2 daughters. And his wife, I can't remember her name, escapes me for the second, Claudia something, a very classic name. He pretty much brutalized in front of the children, and went to such extremes that he even attacked the family dog, mercilessly killing it in front of the children, for some whatever minor indiscretion that he thought they shouldn't have committed while he wasn't at home. And I'm not saying that this would give anybody the right to become angry, violent, person who overlords over his own family, but that's pretty much, it's not an excuse, but it's saying that the way these boys were raised was, in terms of an abusive, neglectful, well, I don't think they were neglectful, but I think they were more so overbearing and belligerent, and almost micromanaging their kids at every turn, and just a new level of my way or the highway type living. But Brenda was Brenda was raised completely differently. She was raised also in a very religious home, and in fact the parents and family members were actually not happy with the movie that was made, Under the Banner of Heaven, or the book, because they felt like it did not portray Brenda's deep faith, and instead kind of made her out to sort of be this outlier with the religion, which I don't think she was. She was an outlier more over the fundamentalist orthodoxy to extremes part of it, not necessarily the original principles. But she, at first, she was very independent, career-minded, ambitious, highly educated, and speaking to her early demise, it's horrific, and her daughter's demise who was only a baby toddler. She was very outspoken, and she did not only not mince words, but she went ahead and made herself kind of like an emblem of justice and compassion with compassionate action. So other family members and people in the community, other family members, i.e. the women, the members in the community felt her strong conviction and could look at, her life as an example of what she did with her resources, education, and voice. And she sort of became this paradigm of, well, if you're in a dire situation, like, go ask advice from Brenda, because she is wise and will know what to do in a critical situation, which many times people find themselves maybe able to sort of get by the daily negatives. I mean, that's using that word lightly, like getting by with like a daily abusive situation, hour by hour, day by day. But when it really gets pushed to the nth degree and they're in an actual crisis where something critical has to take place for the safety of them and their children, many times people go blank and they just, they know they can't call the police, they know they can't ask the church, they don't have anywhere to turn. And she kind of filled that space for people, whether that was her goal or not. I think she was just the kind of person who felt that it matters it matters that you voice your belief system. And she seemed the kind of person who felt like if you did not use your voice, it was kind of like, well, are you truly aligned with that belief system or not? Because if you truly are, you would have to go do something about it. You couldn't just sit on it. And I mean, I think to Brenda, talk was kind of cheap, even though talk was kind of, not talk like gossiping, but like talk in and like advising people, being a source of comfort, giving information that other people, resourceful information, didn't have. Like, she seemed to be somebody who didn't think that, what's that Bible saying? Faith without works is dead. That's the kind of person she appeared to be. And it's terrible that she would die, just in her mid-20s over these people who are completely ridiculous. Yeah. The other thing was polygamy. Like, the Lafferty brothers also hated her because she did not believe in polygamy and was vocal about that. And ultimately, that was something that both of the brothers wanted to have as part of their lives. And in fact, Ron, at some point, wanted to marry or bed his, I think she was 14-year-old stepdaughter. Is that right? Yeah. So what they ended up doing when Brenda was 24, she was living in American Fork, Utah with her husband, Alan Lafferty, and their 15-month-old daughter, Erica. So in July of that year, they basically went and got ammunition and weapons, and they went and broke into her house when her husband wasn't home, and they murdered her violently, strangling her with like a cord of I think it was a vacuum cleaner, and then slashing the daughter's throat. And they also, attacked Brenda to the point, they almost severed her spine. Neither of them lived. Both brothers went on the run. They're eventually caught. I think they were in Las Vegas. And after they were convicted, Ron had been suffering from severe psychosis. I mean, beyond spiritual psychosis. Like, many had deemed it a schizophrenia that he was. Hearing literal voices that he thought was God telling him to go kill Brenda and the baby. And Ron ended up receiving the death penalty, and then at one point, Dan received 2 life sentences. Ron died of natural causes in prison. He ended up not being killed, though when asked what kind of execution he wanted, he was offered a firing squad or lethal injection, and like, I think he said something obnoxious like, well, I think I'll go with the less trod path or whatever. I'll take the firing squad if you don't mind. And so the judge, politely squashed that, and so he was gonna get the lethal injection. But Ron Lafferty actually lived his late 70s in prison. That's right. So what else is there to say about this horrific, tragic story? Just that most abuse or like severe breaking down of another person or persons under somebody who is obviously mentally deranged or under severe addiction, many of these, not to say that she didn't see the red flags coming, but most of the time these kind of situations come with a sort of, where you can sort of, from an observer's viewpoint, see that the other person, the dangerous person, is slowly breaking down, or they're breaking down their barriers between their feelings are outweighing the rules of society or the law. That was another thing that the Lafferty men really, besides polygamy, besides wanting total surrender and domination, submission of the women in their lives or children, they also had an extreme dissociation or a breakage between what they thought was God's law. Remember, these people are not all the brothers, but some of them are having either spiritual psychosis or actual mental illness psychosis with visions and voices, telling them that they're, a direct line from God commanding what they should do next, which in many cases, would we see that with people who have tried to attack the Capitol, or, you know, like have tried to, you know, I'm talking about a single instance, not like what happened with 9/11, where people have like taken it upon themselves to go take their anger towards the government and politicians, and just go do something extreme. Many times it's because the voice of God from their mental illness is directing them to do these specific actions. And like, considering that my own biological mom was a paranoid schizophrenic and daily had psychotic visions and commands, it wasn't from God per se. I mean, sometimes she'd say it was the Empress of China, or she would say it was, you know, the FBI. There's always some connection with like psychosis, the mentally ill, and like it's usually the government. It's usually the FBI or the CIA. This is like super common. You know, they're agents of change, I guess. And then, of course, they're usually